Večeras govorimo o zemlji koja ne želi da bude kopija Zapada. Želi da bude drugačija, da definiše novi multipolarni svet u kome ćemo svi živjeti. Razgovaramo sa čovekom koji je u mladosti bio svedok Kine na kolenima, zemlje koja se borila zaista da preživi i rešavala probleme gladi svojih građana, ali i čovekom koji je bio svedok iz prvog reda meteorskog uspona ove zemlje. Moj gost je profesor sa jednog od najprestižnijih kineskih univerziteta, čovek koji je bio lični prevodilac dugogodišnjeg lidera komunističke partije i arhitekte moderne Kine, Deng Sjaopinga, i danas jedan od najuticajnijih intelektualaca u Kini. On je profesor Džang Vejvej, ali je realno mnogo više od onoga što nosi profesorska titula. On ne objašnjava samo kako funkcioniše Kina, on veruje da je kineski model budućnost sveta. Džang je prava zvezda u Kini, vodi TV show na nacionalnoj televiziji koji prati više od milijardu ljudi. Milioni ga prate na društvenim mrežama. Njegova predavanja gledaju milioni, njegove ideje izazivaju kontroverze širom planete. New York Times ga je nazvao propagandnim akademikom, ali njega to ne brine. Ima samo jednu jednostavnu poruku za ceo svet. Dragi prijatelji, Zapad je samo jedan put, postoji i drugi put razvoja. Da li svet zaista ulazi u eru u kojoj i Kina postavlja pravila igre? Ko će prvi osvojiti veštačku inteligenciju? Ko će i kako u narednih 20 godina oblikovati našu planetu i živote svih ljudi i gde je tu Srbija? O tome razgovaramo večeras. So first of all, thank you very much for visiting Serbia, visiting Belgrade, and having time for this talk. As I used to say, it's one very unconventional TV broadcasting format because it's about two people sitting in a space and talking about all possible topics in the world, not only about concepts, ideas, or some journalistic facts, but it is more about transferring something which is, what is behind, who are the people behind that. And in that case, Professor Vejvej, I would like to talk, before we talk civilizations and superpowers, I want you to take you back to the one specific room. In 1975, in Shanghai, I think the second largest jade factory, where you started as apprentice. I think at that time you were 17 years old, and at the same time, young boy who were also learning English from the dictionaries in the night time. Explain us, what was that boy hoping for, or what was he afraid of?
I see. It was the time of Cultural Revolution. And Chairman Mao at that time felt Chinese young people somehow lost this revolutionary zeal. And he said they should go to the countryside or go to work in factories or go to the military rather than going to universities. So usually after college, after 3 or 4 years high school, you are supposed to attend this college entrance exam. But Mao said that exam, no, let's abolish it. So after graduating from high school, I went to a factory. And in theory, 3 years later, I could be selected to enter a university, but chances are very slim. So I just followed my own hobby. Yes, I was working in the jade carving factory, yet my own hobby, real hobby, is foreign languages.
Basically also your real hobby.
That's true.
That's good.
So I began to study English on my own. As you said, were actually listening to the teaching program through the radio, teaching English. And then also at night after working in the factories. In the end, after 3 years of working in the factory as a worker, as an apprentice, all of a sudden, Deng Sjaopinga came back to power. And Deng said we should restore the system of college entrance exam. So I sit for the exam and entered the Fudan University and became majoring in English and American literature.
I can imagine before
Yeah.
that, still being in the factory and being apprentice. You know,
Yeah.
and if I could read it well, you were the youngest child in your family who stayed in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how was the life back then. Just
Yeah, it
about
was
your
a-
experience, you know,
Yeah.
being, you know, more or less alone.
Yeah, it was a bit tough because we have altogether, it's a large family.
Yeah.
I have 5 brothers, sisters, you know, together. I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
So that time the policy is because in our 6 kids altogether, 2 of them went to Heilongjiang, Sino-Soviet border. 2 of them went to Yunnan province.
Totally.
Sino-Laotian border, Laos.
Laos, yeah.
And so the last 2, according to the policy at that time, could stay in Shanghai. So we went to work in factories.
Yeah.
That's the policy at that time. It's a tough time because Mao really felt the Chinese youth should temper themselves for the cause of revolution.
I can only imagine that
Yeah.
the generations of today, our kids, they
Yeah.
cannot even imagine that how it is
Yeah.
that you really lived
Yeah,
through this time. It was not so far away. It was
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
We are still the generation.
Xi Jinping also belonged to that generation. He was a bit older than us, but he also
Yeah.
went to the countryside.
Yes?
He was there for 6-7 years. Yeah.
This
Tough
is
experience.
Really tough. And you know, I also know that your father fought for the New Fourth Army.
Yes.
And against the Japanese occupation.
Yeah.
And you grew up, let's say, inside the founding story of the
Yeah.
modern China.
Yeah.
What was, in your opinion, what was the one thought that your father taught you that you still carry with you, and you know it still work today for you?
Yeah. It's very precious in the sense that because he was deeply involved in the military struggle against Japanese aggression. So this Second World War for Chinese was a huge battle for national survival because China was so much weaker than Japanese. Japan at that time produced steel 100 times more than China, although China was much more populous. China was an agricultural society at that time. Japan was already industrialized. So no match in terms of military power. But my father's generation joined the New Fourth Army to fight Japanese. I have a lot of admiration for him and for his generation. So you may remember, you know, in the year 1989, there was this accident called Tiananmen and as a crisis. And then Deng Sjaopinga, Chinese leader at that time, met with foreign guests. And he said, United States want to stage a kind of revolt against Chinese government. But don't forget, People's Republic of China is a product of armed struggle, 22 years armed struggle. So without support from the ordinary people, this People's Republic cannot survive. So when I was in the late 1980s and early 1990s, I was enrolled into Geneva University when Yugoslavia divided and war broke out, when the Eastern Bloc broke down. And for us, it's for the first time I felt it's different. Because when I saw the Hungarian, I was there in Budapest. The national flag was still flying, but without the star, its cap taken out. But for the Chinese, for the general public, the 5-star flag will be forever there. Although people have a lot of grievances about the government at that time, and many people took to streets, yet they still want to keep People's Republic of China. So this is different.
When we come back, you went to university, you went to study first languages, but then you worked your way also to international relations, and you know, after that you let's say spent some years as an English interpreter
Yes.
of Deng Sjaopinga, and this about some 5 or more years you worked on his side. That's how you also came to Yugoslavia. But let us forget the speeches and official meetings. Tell me about the man in the car between the meetings. What did you see that the world didn't see, actually?
Well, Deng was a remarkable leader, because when I was working for him, he was already in his early 80s. He was 81 years old when I first met him. And but he was, you would call statesman, not politician. He looked into the future. He was thinking of China in the next 3 decades, 5 decades, 100 years. All visions, goals that he may not see in his lifetime. But he talked about this. For instance, at that time he said that China should quadruple its GDP within 2 decades, from 1980 to 2000. Then he then asked himself, he said, if we want to achieve that objective, what will be the power supply, electricity? We should plan for that. And he asked Li Peng, at that time Deputy Prime Minister, he said, you should do a study. If our economy will be 4 times bigger, what about our power supply? How many times bigger it will be? So this had to do with this strategic planning. So today, China's electricity power supply is the best in the world today.
So that was actually the vision.
Yeah, the vision.
If you see what specifically with the people with very rare people, which we both not calling politicians, but
that's
actually
true.
the visionaries. That
always thinking long-term and holistic way. So this is very significant.
And when you were more or less a young man at that time, what did his presence of this kind of statesman, of a visionary, teach you about power? Not as a system, but as a practice. What did you learn from him that maybe you wish your students had understood about it now?
You know, Chinese philosopher Confucius made a very famous remark. He said, roughly, it's rough translation, water can carry the boat, can also overturn the boat. Water means people. So Chinese philosophy, or the philosophy of the Chinese Communist Party, is that the real power is with the people. But for leaders, a good leader should be someone who can mobilize people's power for their own benefit. So this is very important. In other words, you have to work for the interests of the vast majority of your people. So later on, when I was working as a scholar, I tried to study Deng Sjaopinga. I came to a conclusion. It's about how he used his power. I said on 3 critical occasions, he made 3 critical strategic choices or decisions for China. And these 3 decisions or choices made China totally different from other countries. Number 1, in 1978, when he came back to power, he said we should immediately start economic reform and open door policy. At that time, there could have other choices. But we tried out in the 1960s, limited reform. See, a bit more trade, a bit more contact with the West. But then said, no, we should large-scale reform, fundamental reform, and opening up to the outside world. That's first choice.
Yes.
Second choice, 1989, when Tiananmen incident occurred. Then saw it very clearly as a color revolution. We should do everything possible to stop this. immediate, as soon as possible. Without his determined effort, perhaps, People's Republic of China would have become former People's Republic of China, as Yugoslavia, as Soviet Union, former Yugoslavia, former Soviet Union. Then the third decision was 1992. After the Soviet Union broke up, most people saw China was faced with deep crisis. Socialism has no chance to win. But Deng said, don't worry. That's the time of our opportunity. It's an opportunity for China. We should seize the moment. So 20 years, not 20 years, within 20 days of the Soviet Union breaking up, he went to a southern city called Shenzhen, China's largest special economic zone. At that time, the major dispute is about whether China should continue its open door policy or not. Many people said the Soviet Union broke up. We had just gone through this Tiananmen crisis, so we should close our door. And otherwise, things will become very difficult. But then said, no way, we should continue to open our door. But
very brave decision at that time, having in mind the context when it's happening.
But he said we should focus on economic development. And he said if China can continue with socialism will win in the end. So he said basically keep reform and opening up, keep improving people's living standard, keeping socialism, and then eventually we'll succeed. So at that time, the most controversial is about the role of the market. And he said, please don't make it an issue. Market is something neutral. It can work for socialism, it can work for capitalism. So don't argue about it. We just practice. And if it's not working, we change the course, we rechange the course, but we try to combine the market force and the role of the state. In the end, it's a successful story.
Yes, but at the time it was not
very difficult.
Only, let's say, a bet on the future. It was really seeing and foreseeing the developments many years in front. And it is very, very unusual. And also after your time, I think in the end of the 80s, you went to Geneva. Yeah. You went abroad and you spent about 20 years being in the West and having a master and PhD in Switzerland and then fellowship in Oxford. You lectured in hundreds of countries. Is this the cliche that you only understand your home when you leave it? Is it true?
In a way. Because I have this feeling, when I was at that time first working in the UN headquarters in Geneva, I said, why not, trying to work towards a PhD. So I was enrolled into Graduate Institute of International Studies. At that time, it's part of Geneva University. Later, it's independent from the university. And I said, let me try to summarize whatever China has gone through since Deng Sjaopinga came to power, economic reform, open door policy. In the end, I tried to study how China has fared during these years, focusing on economic reform and ideological trends. That became my PhD thesis. In the end, it's a book. In the end, it's about the Chinese model of development. So I became one of the earliest scholars who wrote about and talk about the China model. Amazing. And even at that time, I saw this model will work for China.
Yes. Have it been something at that time, living in the West, and where you said, okay, this is something what I would like to you noticed something, not as a political system, but as everyday life, that you wished that China had at that time?
And one key message from the breaking up of the Soviet Union or the failure of Soviet communism was a lesson Deng Sjaopinga said many times. Basically said the Soviet Union lost because of the economic failure, because its living standards of the Soviet Union could not compete with the West. Because in the case of China, we should do our best to improve people's living standards. So this is also a message that has to do with the Chinese traditional philosophy. Because in China, Confucianism, it's all about people's livelihood first. Whatever policies, whatever political, economic, social, educational, policies, they must all boil down to delivering something tangible for the ordinary people.
Yeah.
And which means in material terms, non-material terms. So Chinese political system, even at that time, was much more pragmatic. It's about providing more consumer goods, better housing conditions, So today, if you look at the Chinese economy, US economy, by purchasing power parity, Chinese economy is already close to 40% larger than the American economy. Yeah, it's $42 trillion vis-a-vis $31 trillion for the United States. China's life expectancy is 1 year higher than American. And per day intake of protein and vegetables also higher than the Americans. So it's already totally different.
But
it's amazing.
That is amazing, and that is something maybe that is hidden in the, let's say, in the fabrics of the Chinese, I would not say independently for the political system, back in the thousands of years, about this kind of, you mentioned it, Confucianism, you mentioned the philosophy of living, the thing about taking care of yourself and having responsibility for the person. It's something which made the difference between some political systems which are also socialistic, but haven't had this kind of earlier, let's say it's more the civilizational matter than actually the political.
Yeah, indeed, as you mentioned, Chinese state is what I call civilizational state, in the sense that China was first unified in 221 BC. And since then, China was, in most of the time, ruled by one unified ruling entity. So the
with the civil servants exam,
and then with the civil servant exam, which started over 1,500 years ago. And so I would describe Chinese political model as selection plus election. Selection is from Chinese tradition, through the exams, not through your performance. And election is from the West, so we combine the both. And behind this is a vigorous system of meritocracy. If you look at the top leadership in China today, the top 7 members of Standing Committee of Political Bureau, most of them, if not all, have worked twice or 3 times as number 1 of Chinese province, party secretary or governor. So literally, they have governed over 100 million people before they came to current positions. So the Chinese, this political leadership is much more competent than the American Donald Trump regime or the EU leadership. It's too weak by Chinese standards.
This is why I want you to start we'll come back to the main ideas of also your approach, and that's what you're calling civilizational state versus some kind of model or political model. And this kind of argument, the 3,000-year continuous political tradition. Let's start with this, and let's now forget the seminars. Where do you feel it in everyday life, in the way you cook, in the way you raise children, in the way you argue with a friend? Where do you feel this civilizational
Yeah.
Not as a theory, but as a habit.
Yeah.
There.
You know, Chinese civilization lives in everyday life. For instance, Chinese food, it's so rich. In theory, you can eat every day a different type of cuisine or food for 365 days every day. Where you have because civilizational state is a state amalgamation of hundreds of states into one over its long history. Let me compare, you know, if you have been to China many times.
Yeah.
If you look at typical people in Beijing, or called Pekingese, or Shanghai, Shanghainese, or Cantonese, three major cities. In fact, the difference between these three peoples in terms of linguistic tradition, in terms of way of thinking, in terms of living life habit, the differences between the three cities, three peoples, are greater than a typical German
and
English, French, or Italian. Yeah. But we live together on the same roof of one civilization. So this diversity and the differences become really
part of these fabrics.
Part of the fabric, and people could make fun of each other, crack jokes about their differences, yet they are very strong national identity. So this is a part of the civilization.
This is something that I also, you know, when I visit China and you go to different cities, you see that people are proud of this kind of local issue. You know, it's like, no, they are Shanghai people. But still, there is this kind of some kind of society fabric behind it, which could come from the fact that it's a civilization which is 2,000 years old, which bring them together still in all the differences, in all variations and everything else. Simply, you can also argue that, you know, Europe started 70 years ago, basically, with this kind of approach, and this is something that we have in China for long years.
China was already a huge country 2,000 years ago, and as a result has its own traditions, and we should respect that tradition. For Deng Sjaopinga, it's very clear: economic globalization, yes; political globalization, no. If you still don't have your own, internet companies, huge platforms based on own languages, then it will be very difficult to catch up in terms of AI revolution.
Sigurno vam se dogodilo na poslu da imate odlične podatke, ali da vas drugi ne razumeju zaista šta želite da kažete i kako da objasnite. A znate da slika govori više od 1000 reči. Danas vam predstavljam alat koji od brojki pravi priču i slike i zove se infogram. Infogram radi po jednostavnom principu. Birate šablon i ubacujete podatke. Na primjer, ako imate prodaju po kvartalima Q1, 1,2 miliona, Q2, 1,6 miliona, Q3, 2,1 milion, za manje od minuta dobijete jasan bar grafikon koji vizualno pokazuje rast. Ako radite prezentaciju, možete napraviti infografiku sa ključnim brojkama. Da li se radi o rastu izvoza, zaposlenosti, tržištima. Sve se automatski prilagođava dizajnu, fontovi, boje, raspored. Postoji i opcija za mape. Recimo, možete prikazati izvoz Srbije po regionima i odmah dobiti vizual koji izgleda kao da je iz ozbiljnog izveštaja. Najvažnije, sve možete eksportovati direktno u PowerPoint ili PDF. Mojim radoznalcima ne moram da objašnjavam ko ima najviše podataka, taj pobeđuje, a još važnije, ko ume da predstavi te podatke na najbolji način, on stvarno pobeđuje. A vi, naravno, ostanite radoznali i vidimo se sledeće na videu.